Hello. Hello. Oh, there's someone here.
Hey, James.
Hey, Brent. Good morning.
Yeah, same to you.
So
Early
are you
birds.
East Coast or West Coast?
I'm Utah, so almost West Coast. Mountain
Oh,
time.
nice. I just was in Utah not too long ago.
Oh, cool. How about you?
I'm right now in California.
Uh,
You're not near Salt Lake, are you?
I'm sorry, say that?
You're not near like Salt Lake City, are you?
Yeah, well, Sandy is a suburb of Salt Lake, more or less.
Oh my goodness. My sister lives in Orem and my
Oh,
brother lives in Layton, I think is what it's called. It's like
yeah,
the
yeah. Yep. The Wasatch
yeah,
Front. Yep.
Yeah, so I've been driving in between those two houses for like the last 3 months.
Oh, that's a good drive. Yeah.
Yeah, so I've been passing you.
Yeah.
We'll have to get together next time I'm in town.
Yeah. Yeah. Ping me. Do lunch or something like that. Dinner.
Yep. I actually went to Newmont University in on 106 South for
Oh, okay.
like 9 months many years ago.
Wow. So you grew up here then? Or,
I did middle school there in Salt Lake.
oh, okay. And are you in Northern California?
Right now I'm in near San Francisco.
Uh,
But my mom's just here, so I'm visiting.
oh, got it.
Yeah, that's
Nice
cool.
to
I'm gonna
see
go grab it.
Hudson and Pooja recovering. Can't do
Yeah.
much without them.
Yeah. Well, we can get talking. I'm gonna go grab a drink really quick, but I'll be right back.
Okay.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, William. I think my mic. Yeah, it is.
Mr. Tim.
Oh,
Hey,
now
how's
we're
it going?
cooking with gas.
Hey, everybody. Hey, Pooja.
Morning, Tim.
Good morning.
I am just seeing if I can grab text from something I wrote earlier. Which I don't see. Guess we give it a little bit and then move forward.
Yeah.
Should we put a link in the Allcore Devs chat?
Yes, I think we should. And
Okay.
we probably should try and do that like a day early, like we do for the Cordes call going forward.
Yeah, you're right. I can do that.
Thanks.
Evening, Annette. Jamie, hey.
Hi, James.
Hello.
יכולנו לממש פלג שבוכה.
Afternoon, Louis.
Good morning, good afternoon, James.
Yeah. We'll do 30 more seconds and then let's go. Does anyone else have something for the things for the agenda?
If we have a bit at the end, Pooja and Hudson were talking about knocking off a couple of EIP is working through to clean up some of them, but I've done some of that work, and I could make a little report of what I've done so far and see if I'm going in the right direction.
Yes, that sounds like a great idea. Let me pull up the agenda. How do you mute Telegram? Does anyone know how to do that? Just like the desktop? There we go.
Just delete the or close the app. Like Rook, close it.
Okay.
I would suggest uninstalling it, but that's just
That's the radical. That's what we need. All right. So I have the agenda here. This is the EIPIP meeting. I am hosting it. Hudson isn't able to make it today after being sick. The general purpose of this meeting is to improve the EIP process. And thank you for everybody who's joining. We have a really, we have a 3-point agenda, and then I have some ideas to present on things that I've been thinking of, like just articulating some of the things I've been thinking about. And let me just look through this. Ordering, just to clarify for me and anybody who's listening afterwards, that this is a very much a meeting of coming together about ideas and proposing things. This isn't proposals or official ones. All of those will go through its own kind of EIP, and we just want to accelerate discussion around them so we can have a little bit more momentum to implement. Ordering the most important issues to address, dividing into teams to come up with ideas for solutions, and then 3, the next call. I'm not sure of the best way to do that. Let me just share my screen here. As soon as I get the right button. You have something, Tim?
No, sorry, I unmuted by accident. But yeah, we still can't see your screen.
Okay. So I guess we can just go into my ideas, or is there something else someone wants to bring up? Or something else to put on the agenda? We can get that on now. And if we have a short meeting today, that's fine. And if anyone has other things to present, please let that be known. So going into EIP 1, there is kind of a lot going on. And then just thinking in general, what is my experience over the last while is the important information in the EIP repository is sort of all over the place. So if I want to look at the hard fork, I have to go into here and to the hard fork meta EIP, and then that tells me information about it. There's an EIP for the process of hard forks, which is another EIP. Then there's the EIP that tracks EFI, which I wrote, which it hasn't gone through yet. And one of the reasons is that it's confusing to have all of this different information in different places.
Does the page you're on now, that's EIPEthereum.org, does that update from the real EIP, or does someone maintain this and keep them in sync?
Yes. So the the EIP repository, if I make a pull request to this EIP that changes this text, this website will be remade.
Okay, cool.
So any EIP that's been accepted into these statuses, like after it's been accepted as draft, then it will show up on this website.
Right. Okay. Yeah, one of the ones I have is ready to push to abandoned, and so I'm just wondering, curious about that.
Would it be possible to also add the creation time and the last update on this page?
The creation time on the EIP?
Yeah, that would help.
Yeah, when the EIP was created and when it was the last updated. And the reason I'm asking is because I've been on this website many times, and you don't know, when you look directly, you don't know if it has been replaced or supersede or whatever, and it can be, it would help in terms of scheming through the content.
Yes. So that one of the reasons I think that's not there is because part of what happens with an EIP is we should also mark that as something to put in. And I think I have a way to integrate that, or a way to make it so more of us can update that information in a timely, more organized manner. Because the reason why stuff like that falls out is because the only people that can edit this text is the EIP editors and then these authors. So if no one, like the last updated, we could have a bot update it, but if we were to have someone update it, it would have to be one of these people. And the EIP editors are already doing way more, like their load is more, and I think that what they're required as far as like information and specialty should be focused on other things than a lot of kind of keeping track of that information. At the same time, all that information is really important for people approaching the EIP and the repository so they can understand what's going on at a quick glance. So that currently there isn't a good way to handle information like that. I would say it's kind of like meta information about the EIP itself, and there isn't an easy way to update it without relying on the authors who aren't doing it. So that's kind of, we'll get back to that. As if there's any other comments or questions while people are going through, I'm happy to be interrupted. And ideas about things to be put in, I want to make sure get on the list for people to talk about.
James, what about adding hard forks into the upper side of the website when it's all core networking interface ERCs meta informational?
So having the meta, I think the only meta EIPs are basically the hard forks ones, no?
Yeah, there's the standard, there's the formal process for hard forks with Alex wrote, which is what's the old system. The EFI will be in here, will be somewhere in here. Then we have a whole bunch of hard forks and EIP1.
To me, that seems right. Like it seems like, meta basically means upgrades, and I think it's good that the process is listed there. And if we actually change the process, which I mean, we have, then it makes sense to also see the old process there. Yeah, I don't know. I think this actually works. My only sort of quibble that I posted about this in Awkward Dev is like your EFI list is still not merged, James. But I think as soon as that's done, it would show up in there, right?
Yeah. And the reason it has been merged is I've gone back and forth with Alex a couple of times about it. And when it was first proposed and when I was first thinking about it, and Alex is thinking as well, is that it really should be a registry, like only a registry. And let me see if I can pull that up. That's lucky that came up so fast. So in the EIP text for the eligibility of inclusion, when I went to write it out, I just wrote this list here.
Yeah.
That is like a registry of the eligible EIPs. And people who are authors are able to edit that. When I was writing it, I realized no one has any clue what any of that means or what the whole process is. So I wrote it out here in this simple summary and abstract and such forth. And someone who is just coming to the repository isn't going to know to go to EFI to read the EFI part and then go to EIP1 to get the other part.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
so really all of this information should be, I'm pointing, but you can't see my fingers. All of this information should be in EIP1.
Yeah, I agree with that. I still think we should probably merge this sooner than later, because right now we don't have like a hard fork meta list to point people to. And that's been like a problem. Like I don't know, I talk with like the EEA, for example, and they're like, oh, what EIPs are being considered? And I basically send them to your PR. So I think I agree it's not perfect. But yeah, I guess, yeah, I think if we merge this, because editing EIP1 is probably like gonna take weeks, if not months. And that's been my experience trying to get like small PRs in it. So if it's like a significant refactor, I don't think like it's going to be done in a matter of days or weeks. So it's probably good to just have this list that we keep in the meantime.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the reason I saw your note in the all core devs about this discussion URL being the barrier. So yes, we should get this included. As far as like administration stuff, we should do this soon. Talking about how do we improve the process of the process. It's how do we get this information into EIP1. So both. Let me share a different screen. Okay, can you guys see this now?
Yep.
Okay, so we have the EIP1, you have the intro, you have a table of contents that points to different parts of EIP1 that has all of the things. And then in that are lists that go to registry EIPs. And those registry EIPs only have like in the case of the EFI list, it has the list of the EFI. So it doesn't have the information about how the EFI process works. To read that, you would read here in EIP1 somewhere. And this would get pretty long, but I think that's okay because it's better to have everything in one place so stuff doesn't get fragmented conceptually.
Yeah, I agree. We should be much more sort of liberal with linking stuff in EIP1. Like every time there's like a new fork meta, we should add it there. The EFI list, yeah.
Yeah, and then so the way we extend the functionality of EIP1 is the authors of these different registries can be whatever they need to be to make them work. Because right now we're pretty limited. Something I'd like to add is this another list. So something extending this is like going back to Louis' point of we don't have a good way of seeing some of this important meta information, and we don't have a good way of editing it as a community or a good process for it, is to have like another registry EIP, which is just people who can edit a certain part. I call them, I'm thinking of them as EIP maintainers, and their goal is just to maintain the repository and keep information up to date that isn't on the same level as needing understanding like an EIP editor would. That was probably a lot of words. So I'll get into like a more kind of concrete example of what I mean. So going back to Istanbul, I made this Google document that tracked like the more fine-grained process that the EIP was going through as a way just to figure out where we were on each one so we could know which ones we need to work on. Because there was something like 35 that applied. And then how do we go from 35 to the fork was just a big mystery.
Could you full screen
So-
that? I can almost read that table.
It's okay if you don't really
Okay.
read it. It's just stuff that would be nice to track specifically about an EIP that an author doesn't need to. Because I wasn't the author of any of these EIPs. So I guess I'll just make it bigger. Here, we'll just do this. So like, is there a PR? Was it formatted correctly? Has it been reviewed and merged? Is there a reference client testing plan reviewed on the all core devs call, last call? Like all of those things an author doesn't need to do. And an EIP editor doesn't need to track either. But it's good to track and it's good to show the progress of the EIP itself. So how do we make it so this kind of information can be tracked? And my solution to that is to have a list, like a group of people like us, and I assume many of us would join it, of maintainers that have access to editing this information as part of an EIP. So in kind of real life example, if I go to the DMV to get my driver's license, I have this form that I fill out that has all this information. And if you think of an EIP kind of being like this form and having questions that need to be answered and then the specification and stuff like that, that's all done by the authors. But there's also this part of the form that is the office use only. And the author doesn't edit this, the people at the counter or whatever when they're doing stuff does. So we could, at somewhere like at the bottom of an EIP, we could have a blank spot that is that anyone on the meta anyone who's on the meta EIP for the maintainers could have access to edit without the permission of the authors and without needing permission from the editors. So we could create a footer of things like last updated or where they are in the EFI process or really anything at all. And the easiest way technically would be to just have a section of the footer be need to exist, and that any changes to that footer could be done by anyone who is on the meta registry as a maintainer.
How would permissions be handled?
Permissions would be handled by the EIP bot. So currently, if I'm an author on an EIP and I make a PR to the EIP repository, the EIP auto merge bot checks that I'm only editing stuff within that I'm an author to. And if it's true, they'll just merge it. It doesn't need any permission from an editor. It doesn't need anything else. Because I'm an author, I'm listed as an author on that page, then I can edit that EIP. It gets auto merged. So you could do a similar check where in the bottom footer, if someone submits a PR that edits the tracking footer, it could check, are you a user in this registry of EIP maintainers or whatever we want to think about calling them? And if it's true, then it can just accept it and no one else needs to make any other things.
That would also restrict the permissions that if maintainer would try and sort of maliciously merge or anything like that, the bot would be able to stop it.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to edit any other parts of the EIP.
That's super cool.
So you have this little part of the form here. And as long as you're living in that form, we could make it whatever we want. It could be pretty, I want to be able to make it kind of updatable, not like get us into a certain format, but just have it, hey, and my thing, the first thing I would think would be nice is like an EFI to tracker or last call. That stuff, as soon as we have a system where we have a group of people that can actually make the edits to them, then we can kind of get rolling or update or change them, whatever it ends up being. At this point, I think I'm rambling, so I should probably pause and say, where are people kind of confused?
Yeah, sometime, because I've made a change to EIP 3 in my own forked repository, and I wanted to show you the direction I was pushing, but yeah, would now be a good time to look at something like that? Because this is exactly the kind of stuff I need to know, because the author, I contacted the author, I had his name sitting here, but anyway, I contacted him. He says, yeah, let's close that one down. And he was happy that I was willing to help with that. So, and so I have a pull request ready to submit, but I wanted to show you guys and make sure I'm doing the right pull request or doing the right process or whatever.
That's a little bit of a different conversation, but I'm happy to have it.
Okay, yeah, if it's later, that's great. Whatever.
Because the problem you're running into is kind of part of one of the things I want to help solve.
Right.
And again, this is all ideas for us to. This isn't a hey, let's do this. It's a I want us to think and talk about it and discuss.
Right.
To decide. So you updating the status, you're not able to actually do that because you have to do the PR and then get someone to approve the change. Which in the case that a change is like substantial to the EIP itself, then an editor should approve the change. If it isn't, then he doesn't need to. We're just adding in extra steps that don't need to happen and are
But yeah,
limited.
this one's here is going from draft to abandoned, so that's pretty.
That would be one that it would be good for an editor to do. So that would make sense.
So when you say editor to do the PR, or me do the PR and get an editor to approve it?
An editor approving your PR.
Oh, so I do the PR first, or send it to him, find an editor or something like that?
Yeah, you make the PR.
I've started on a PR. It's just a draft, and I'm sure it won't be the final one, but.
I can show you in this. So this one I have. So this is the PR I made for the EFI. And once I made it, it shows up and it gives like the poll 2, 3, 7, 8. You can't see it because I'm now sharing the wrong screen. So this is my pull request that I made. Made of 10 patch 5 to Ethereum master. Perhaps like doing just a workshop of this is a good idea. We should add that as like a thing to do. Like
I just showed a link to the modification, my forked modification of the EIP to the chat channel. If you wanted to click on that, then I can just show you.
I don't have I turned my Telegram off. So
the Zoom chat.
Oh, the Zoom chat. Yeah, I think we should add like a workshop of anyone who wants to work on going through the process of doing a pull request to EIP. That'd be kind of cool.
Yep.
Do you have a particular conference in mind with that?
No, I just think like a call would work.
An online call, yeah.
Basically, what we're doing what I'm talking about with Brent right now, but open to more people and more explicitly saying, "Hey, let's dive into
this. Yeah.
This is how you make a pull request to the EIP repository."
That's my question.
So this is your EIP here.
Yeah.
It is a fork. You haven't merged it, or you haven't made it a pull request.
Oh yeah, of course. I'm just practicing on my own fork till I can get it. And see, I added that. You can see I changed the status is to abandon. That's one change I made, and then I added that abandoned statement since it isn't Martin that's going to do this pull request. But anyway, I was just thinking along lines. But I'm probably sure I need to do it different than that. But
so this is totally right. This I would put in, like if we had a section I'm talking about of having
that's as you said that, I go, yep.
Like it would be perfect to have something like this where we could say, oh yeah, this is the substantiation for something that happened, and just put it in the the footer for
Right.
people managing it. That'd be perfect. It wouldn't fit in the abstract, but it should go somewhere. It's good
Right,
to have
right.
something like that. Just better information in general is good. Okay, so
Maybe
Tim,
going
what do you-
back.
Oh yeah.
Sorry.
We'll
No,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No, if you have a question, go for it.
It's sort of like a moving forward thing. So I'll just sort of throw it out and I'll see if this is constructive for conversation or if you'd rather move on to what you were saying. There was some talk before about the difficulties of making changes to EIP1 itself. I was wondering if it's useful to make a distinction between historical EIPs and future EIPs, as in if you were going to change the EIP template, I guess, for the future, as in only for EIPs after whatever, would that make it easier? Would that expedite being able to make a change to the EIP process versus only changing historical ones? Or maybe it's the exact opposite. I just basically wanted to throw out the idea if it's a useful distinction to make a distinction between EIPs that have already been made and changing EIPs for the future.
The intersection of where, so on one hand, it doesn't really matter at all because a GitHub file is a GitHub file is a GitHub file, and it could be whatever it wants. So you could reorder and do everything completely different. Where there are some limiting factors is the Jekyll program or whatever that creates the website is looking for certain things and expects a certain format. And if it doesn't get that, it breaks.
Yeah.
So any change. So really more to what you're saying is any changes that break that format, we need to make along with updating the web to be able to handle the new format.
I mean, that's great. Also, I hadn't meant that actually from a technical standpoint. I meant it more from, I feel reluctant to use the word political, but just in terms of getting consensus for acceptance.
So I think for that part, it's kind of hard by design. Like, I think it should be hard, and especially going forward, because what you're saying, if you're changing, the way it works for future EATs, you're kind of changing what's like the rough consensus on Ethereum about, how we actually make changes, which is a pretty big deal. So I think, it's okay that this is like not the quickest process, because the last thing you want is for this to change and then people to feel like, they didn't have a say in it and that things are happening behind closed doors. So I think we should really try and make everything explicit and give like time for people to comment and give feedback. Yeah, so I don't think that's like particularly a bad thing. One thing I've been thinking about is, it seems like the process for core EIPs and other EIPs is like very different, and how we make that more explicit. Like we already have kind of the EFI, process, and we probably don't want the EFI process for non-core EIPs. And if that's the case, it's like we probably need just a better or a clearer separation between core EIPs and non-core, where we probably leave the process for non-core EIPs unchanged.
Yes. And something else I remember you saying earlier, Tim, was like the EIP process, as far as the core devs and coming to decisions and then making them, actually works pretty well. What is lacking is the EIP repository. It lags significantly. So it doesn't follow very well the decisions that are made and when they're made, or like the consensus.
Oh, sorry, my internet's terrible. I kind of missed the last bit that you said.
That the way the all core dev calls or go through an EIP works well. What is missing is the EIP repository doesn't really follow it very well. Doesn't follow the process.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, that I agree. Yeah, and I like your idea around like, yeah, the sort of office use only part, like that I 100% support. I think, and so I think, yeah, those are like two different things, right? Like the process tracking, we probably should try to get done as quickly as possible because it's not really doing much except just providing more visibility. But this first bit, like, slides 2 and 3 on your proposal, like seems like a much bigger undertaking. That's all I wanted to highlight.
I just want to react on the core dev decision making. While I completely agree, it overall works pretty well. I did spot at least 2 cases of where there was a lack of sort of well-defined process, and because of it created some like a floating time where we didn't really know what was going on and how to push or not push the case forward. The first one I was thinking is the one from the one that relates to Blake 2B.
Yeah, Blake 2B. I was gonna say
Blake 2B. I mean, I'm going to say bluntly, I feel it was not handled properly, and the reason is because the people who were pushing it sort of like were not there on the call, and we continued, the core dev continued pushing it because there was no one to say to reject it, but at the same time there was no one there to defend it, and it went on, and until the time we realized that the spec was actually not fully defined, and what this says and what the spec were doing was slightly different, and that I think should have been addressed before. So that was the first example. And I have another example, but I don't want to call it like loud, and I just want to say this way. There is a sort of VIPs that are also outside of a core dev core skill for various reasons, because it involves like advanced math, or it involves skill set that the core dev may not have. And those one should have a process that needs to be better discussed and defined, if I may. I think I will maybe discuss it in more specific case with individually, but I do have a few examples there.
and that would be good examples of stuff that would be great to fit into a section of EIP1 that then we could have linked in the table of contents. That some help. I would really look forward to your help on that, on clarifying some of those, Louis, and then getting some language that the core devs agree with, because I can say on the other side of the Blake 2B, having helped get that through, and that it was equally easy.
I'm not blaming the Blake 2B. It worked. I mean, the problem with Blake 2B is that I feel that if we would have been better, just like, okay, one of the, I think it's out of the scope of today, but I have like a discussion for what the champion of the EIP should be doing, so that's out of scope. But in the case of Blake 2B, yes, I think there was something wrong here. And sorry, James, you please continue.
But I think, yeah, one thing I just want to add to your comment, Louis, I 100% agree with like EIPs that are very technical. And the problem with the process right now is they get treated very differently. So to like take specific examples, you look at like EIP 1962, which is being proposed now. There's a lot of concern by developers that like, we might not be able to evaluate it properly because it's kind of advanced crypto. And it seems like I wouldn't say there's like general consensus, but there's like some consensus around, okay, if we have 2 different implementations and they kind of give out the same things, that's probably good enough. An audit would be nice. It's not clear we're going to get it. Whereas if you look at ProgPow, right, because it had this added element of like, political contentiousness, it's like it wouldn't even get discussed unless there's an audit, even though, it had a working test net and whatnot. And it felt like it kind of had a higher technical burden because of its like political implications. And a lot of people on the core devs call, felt like the audit was just kind of a distraction to push the can down the road. And so, yeah, I agree. There's probably a lot of value in trying to get, what's like the rigor we demand for EIPs. And like recently also when Rick Dudley came on the call, he wasn't sure for 1559, right? Like, what is the sort of rigor that we should demand for a change like that, which is not maybe as technical, but has like wide-ranging economic implications. And I don't think I don't think there's an easy answer to that question, but I think having some answer is probably better than our current status quo.
I definitely agree with this, and all the example you took were exactly on spot, and weirdly enough, they actually all require, in my opinion, different answers. They are
yeah. And we need to find what's like the right level of, like, do we, so to put it bluntly, right? Do we expect any sort of major EIP like that to put in, $10,000 to $100,000 for an audit, right? Whether it's a technical audit, an economic audit, and if so, we should make that clear. And the downside is it obviously discourages anybody who can't afford or can't raise those funds to propose like such an EIP.
There is something great to that. I think there is other ways to make it. It also, in my opinion, depends on the sophistication and the EIP. For instance, one that can be implemented by the client, like by when EIP that can be defined or made by the client, like Blake 2B, probably doesn't require an audit that long, because if it's broken, then the client knows what to do. It's their job. Like, to some extent, when I say job, I mean like they know how to react to that. For EIP like ProgPow, you're fully right. If something's wrong for whatever reason, it happens to be there is an attack vector somewhere, and independently of the political aspect, then what should they do? And that is a sort of a process we need to put in place to allow for either to have a clear path to acceptation, and also a fast path to withdraw, because I think that is most likely the biggest burden for many VIP proposers. Having a fast no is better than a language yes or maybe.
Yeah, I agree. That makes sense.
Yeah. I also agree. If there was some sort of expectations, it's a healthy relationship with people. Like if there is expectations ahead of time, things go way better versus doing stuff and then figuring out, oh, I was wrong about that, when the entire time both people wanted to do what was right. They were just doing what they knew. And it just keeps going. So it sounds like we're on agreement that, just see if I can summarize this here, but there are certain things that it would be good to articulate around expectations for people who are doing a certain complexity of EIP.
That's a yes.
Yeah. And then how you set that bar is an exercise for the reader.
Yeah. So articulating it, recording it somewhere, and that I think is going to be one of the longer. It sounds like a long process, a long thing to get right.
It probably will, and it will also needs to be an adaptive and a per case scenario. But we should have at least sort of guidelines of expectation in terms of independent implementation, independent review, which would set the bar pretty high enough for and all the rest of the edge cases to buy on the call.
Yep. So it kind of sounds like a subgroup forming. Maybe that's something you would be interested in leading, Louis, is kind of figuring out some of the language around that.
I'm not sure I would know how to do it, but if anyone wants to take the lead, I would be very happy to join and discuss. I'm just not sure how you would want it to be.
I'm just thinking of dividing into teams and coming up ideas for solutions, which is one part of the agenda. This is a clear place we could create a team.
That could be. I need to think about it but let me think about it. Okay, I'll get back to you offline.
Yeah, and I would be interested in joining that team as well. If there was a team for figuring that part out.
Sure, I'll be very happy to. I need to think in terms of schedule with my day-to-day job. Let's take this offline, okay? Thanks.
Yeah. Yep. So as far as stuff that I was going to present today, it's really kind of those three things: reorganizing the EIP1 into being the canonical place for everything informational, pushing all of the permission things that need to be edited onto different registry EIPs. Another one that would be nice would be doing a registry for EIP numbers, so we have a logical numbering system. I think that kind of system is pretty extendable and also approachable for people doing the system, adding in, like starting this idea of what is it that EIP editors don't need to do that a group of us could do and manage, which is kind of around this idea of an EIP process tracking footer, which is like the for in-office use only part. And if that's the right way to go, or if that's kind of something we agree on, how do we develop that into the EIP bot to make it work technically?
Sounds great.
Sounds good to me.
More feedback on the idea or ways that it could be. Oh, thank you, Pooja. Who just said great idea in the text.
I think so. I agree. Yeah, this all looks good. One thing, maybe like a fourth idea that we should start discussing is how do we add more EIP editors? And I know this has been like brought up again and kind of dropped a bunch of times, but it feels like something where, you know, we have this huge backlogs of EIPs, and it, you know, and it's, you know, the people we have are kind of overworked to do that. At the same time, there's a pretty high bar that you need to give access to those people. So it's not an easy question either, but like, yeah, what's like a process we can have to add EIP editors that, you know, that make sure that the people who end up being there don't like abuse that privilege.
How are the current EIP editors? What made them editors?
They were all basically working at the EF in like, I don't know, 2015-ish. So like when Ethereum started. And I think at that point, the project was small enough that it was easy to get a set of editors, but it hasn't really grown since.
So the people who were editing the EIP are the same people who were there in 2015?
Not exactly, but like, yes, more or less. They're like all people, you know, like Hudson, Alex B, Nick Johnson from ENS. So they're all kind of, to my knowledge, like maybe there's some exceptions here, but like most of the editors are just like very long-standing Ethereum community members, which to be fair, I don't think is a bad criteria, right? Like I think, you know, it's probably something you only want to have people who've been part of a community for a long time, but we haven't like added like a second or a third wave of editors. And yeah, looking at that list, right? Like people like Vitalik obviously don't have time to do this, right? It's, you know, not saying he should be removed per se, but like he just doesn't contribute as an editor, which makes sense. And so it's like, yeah, how can we kind of grow that list?
None of those people seems to have the time to do it, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly, right. And to be fair, some of them do, and it's great that they do. But like, yeah, we should find a way to help them. But at the same time, we should still keep, you know, a very, very high bar for people to be added to that list. And how you make that explicit is hard.
Just a brainstorming idea for how to do that kind of stuff. At Canonizer algorithm, we have what's called a peer ranking expert system where peers can rank each other. And so that gives you a quantitative measure of their rank in the community. And that could possibly, we could set something like that up where everyone could vote people and then the peers rank each other and then you get a quantitative score. And if you meet a certain bar, then you can become an editor. Just an idea.
I'm
As
not a
far-
huge fan of those like sort of a mechanism because ranking people for such a for not technical for things that are sort of abstract is like something I'm not very comfortable with. But I wonder if the EF would have like some sort of a fund, like some sort of funding to pay for like this small test, like having. I'm sure we could find people if they were willing, if they were paid for like even not a lot of money, but just something to contribute for their effort.
And I think we'd probably find a lot of people unpaid if we had a clear list of criteria of what they want, right? I'm a bit cautious of adding like a tool or like a dependency in this process. I feel like it has to be kind of half, explicit criteria, half rough consensus, probably from the current EIP editors. But yeah, I think we probably definitely need more people.
So when I was talking with Alex earlier, one of the EIP editors, like they spent some time trying to finding other ones, like previously, like at other times. And one of his feedbacks was like finding people that then really are active. Right. To kind of say it another way, what we don't want to have happen is to create a system that finds the best EIP editor, but then never shows up. By being qualified technically, wanting to do it, and also doing it are three sides of a Venn diagram that all have to connect.
Yeah. And I think, frankly, like the only people who can probably do this without getting paid more are like people who work on Ethereum full time. So either, they work for like Consensus or the EF or some place like that, or another company where it's like their job gets them to work on Ethereum full time. And this is just part of like the open source work they do. And then the challenge is also so Pooja, I know like you mentioned like Alexei in the comment, which probably is technically qualified enough and whatnot, but then it's like, is it the best use of that person's time, right? Like what's the Venn diagram of like the person could be writing code to contribute to Ethereum or approving EIPs, and other people who are just like technical enough to do the EIPs part, and it's maybe not like that big of an opportunity cost for them to actually be doing this work.
Guys, I need to leave you. Thank you very much for the call. I will keep in touch with the rest of you offline, and I will listen to the reminding of the call after. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you.
Thanks for coming in.
Yep. Two different conversations. One is what is the bar for becoming an EIP editor? The other one being how do we get people that fulfill it and start working on it?
Just one other thing. I've actually talked about this internally with people at Consensus to get their thoughts. And one question that people had is, what's the commitment, right? Like if they're an EIP editor, what are they actually, like time-wise and responsibility-wise, what are they agreeing to do? And I think if we could say something like that, it's like, I don't know, 5 hours a week or whatever, 10 hours a week. And these are the things you actually have to do. That might help find people.
Yes. The other kind of interesting thing is, you don't technically, anything that an EIP editor does, you can do without being an EIP editor, mostly, as far as responding to PRs, making comments, saying, hey, you need to do this. Okay, yeah, this is good to go. Everything except for just hitting the merge button. So I think there's kind of parallel things that can happen. If we can take some of the stuff and put it into this things that maintainers can do, or like the office use only form, things that need to be tracked there can be done by them. So we're sort of offloading what we can from the EIP editors, define what the EIP editors do, then define like what the bar is for an EIP editor. And this is sounding like another group is forming, more like a group idea around defining this. then through a system where people participating in this, in like the process tracking footer or being a maintainer, like you can see someone's being active, then it's pretty easy to see, oh yeah, this person, if he was an editor, great. I'm not saying that exactly right. Like, how do we get people to start participating? Instead of saying, hey, let's find people and then get them to participate, just get more people participating and then turn them into editors. That makes sense?
Yeah, and I think that's probably just doing a better job. You know, like this EIP editor responsibility is kind of buried within EIP1. So it's like, how do we find a, like, and the cat herders can probably help with this. And I think William and Brent, if I recall correctly, had done a bit of this. But like, yeah, how do we just make it clear what people should be doing and can do, and just, yeah, market that?
Only Brent. I feel bad taking credit.
Oh, okay. Sorry, my bad.
Yeah. And there is some disagreement already among EIP editors about what that is themselves. So that is kind of another thing to work through. There's someone is making a note in the chat.
Oh, sorry. It was just a joke in the chat.
I can't see it. For some reason, I can't see the chat anymore.
I just said it was great that the EIP editors are also disagreeing within them amongst themselves.
Oh yeah. Onboarding more editors is one of the things discussed in last call. Like, so maybe we can reach out to frequent EIP submitters like Alexi to check they would be interested. Alexi, to me, would be one of those individuals that needs to not be an EIP editor. He could be. But as far as time goes, this is just such a hard thing because the bar high means you're a high contributing member.
There's an old American joke about jury duty. Since I don't think this is all an American crowd, I'll explain it in about 10 seconds. Jury duty is completely, like, people are randomly picked to be jurors in court cases in America. So there's an old famous line that anybody smart enough to serve jury duty is smart enough to get out of it. I mean, I sort of feel like this is a similar kind of paradox. Anyone good enough to be an EIP editor is necessarily going to have demands on their time. It's just trying to figure out exactly where to find a good equilibrium in that chaos.
Yeah, well said. We're like at 3. This is an hour, right?
Right.
So we're at like 3 minutes left. I think summarizing. Does anyone have opposing thoughts to the having a process tracker with some maintainers that have the ability to edit it and reforming EIP1, like that kind of stuff? Any other feedback or concern?
I guess the real question is what now? Like, what can we do now? Like, is there anything actionable right now?
Actionable is if we think it's a good idea, then we figure out how to get the bot to do it. And we figure out who changed the AutoMod bot to create a space that does this.
Who does that? Like, who controls the bot?
No one controls the bot.
I mean, someone should have permissions and code it, no?
Yeah. So I see what you're saying. The permissions are the EIP editors. So I remember Hudson saying that there was one coder that was interested in participating in this from the EF, that like a web developer.
So it would be about getting in touch with someone, having them, having them make a PR to modify the bot and getting that merged. Like that's what we're looking at right now.
Yep. And then that the website would need to be able to render it. So 2 parts, the auto merge bot would need to support it. And then the Jekyll web builder would need to be able to render it and deploy it.
And other than that, you're saying there's no sort of consensus issue in the way. Like, basically all you need to do is get in touch with this person who's willing to program the bot. They program the bot, and then that's it.
Yeah. And the consensus part is we would bring it up on all core devs call and figure out how some of the other things fit in with that.
Wait, does that need to happen first? So I mean, like, as in what's the next step? The next step is all core devs, or it's programming the bot?
Finding someone to program the bot.
I misunderstood. I thought you said you had someone.
Oh, there is someone that Hudson, but I don't know I don't remember who he is, and I don't know what level he's involved. But I remember him saying there was a web developer that was interested in participating, so that person could do it. It's figuring out, is it possible through the system that I described technically? And then if it's possible, kind of get it done, and at the same time, make sure everyone's okay with it. So we're not just deciding it right now.
Okay. So, I mean, so basically what we need to do now, or I get, it sounds like this is mainly things that you yourself are doing, James, correct me if I'm wrong, but we need to find someone who can handle the code for the bot to see if this is even realistic. And you want to simultaneously try and propose to the all core devs the various like change ideas going on now.
Yeah.
Cool.
I would bet the bot could pretty much do anything you want as long as you clearly spec it out. It's that detailed spec that I think would be the hard part.
Yeah, we'll have to talk to a web editor about that. Someone who's helping. As far as redoing EIP1 in this kind of format, that's just a matter of making the PRs and then having people talk about it enough, which will take a long time. But it makes sense. And I think, that's it for me.
Are we scheduling another meeting now?
Oh yeah, schedule another meeting. Should we do 1 week or 2 weeks?
I like a consistent time every 2 weeks or something like that.
Yeah, I think 2 weeks is easier than 1 week.
Okay.
2 weeks from today, then?
Sounds good to me.
Same time, same place?
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. So yeah, I guess that's that then. And is there any other items?
Not for me.
All right. So I guess that's it then, James. Yeah. That's it. All right, fun. Great. Well then, have a great day, everybody.
Yeah. Yep. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.